Hello, I'm Claudia Kay, and we are on part 5. So I did review the first 4 parts that I had filmed yesterday and realized there were a couple things I hadn't talked about. So if you're new here, this is my channel about my chronic illnesses because I have more than one chronic illness. And couple disclaimers, nothing that I say is ever going to be medical advice. It is just my own lived experience. I am trying to tell my story in this series of videos to the best of my ability, but remember, as always, it is my perception of how things happened, and there are always 2 sides to every story, and I am also going to be as truthful as I can while still protecting some people, so you may not get the whole story, if that makes sense. So, like, you know, my marriage was not a happy marriage, but I'm not going to talk about that a ton because I'm not going to hurt my children who still love their father, as they should. So those are my disclaimers. So a couple things I want to mention. When I left you in part 4, I had received my fibromyalgia diagnosis and then got pregnant within a couple of months after that. So I did not have time to process the fibromyalgia diagnosis before I was pregnant and then, you know, moving into the next phase of my life. And when I got pregnant, the symptoms almost completely stopped. So here I am newly diagnosed, and then I'm pregnant within a couple of months, a few months, and the symptoms almost completely go away. So then, you know, I'm doubting the diagnosis. And so there were a couple of other things I forgot to mention. I did have digestive issues, like always. As a baby, I'd had some tests that were inconclusive. And then I was chronically constipated, but I just didn't complain about it. Like I was the kid that never said anything about anything. Like I just was very quiet about things and didn't. My middle sister was sick a lot, and my parents were busy taking care of her when she was sick. And so I just didn't say things. And then as a young adult, ran through another whole battery of tests on the digestive system that were inconclusive again. And figured out on my own that I was having a reaction to the preservatives that they put into freezer meals, frozen foods. So that was all before my accident. I mean, this was what I was 20, just turned 21 when I had all of these tests run. So pretty sure I was 20 though. I wasn't even 21 yet, but I don't know. So again, tests were inconclusive, but I discovered that I was having a reaction to the preservatives, and so I was very careful with food that had preservatives in it after that. And there were also a couple of things that I didn't remember to talk about, but I had sensory issues. And back then, that wasn't even something that you would have addressed in the 70s. Sensory issues where you were just being picky and you needed to get over it kind of thing, right? And also, remember, my mom had 5 kids in 6.5 years, and I was the quiet kid who never complained about anything. But I remember laying awake at night, and mind you, insomnia, lifelong insomnia, and not being able to sleep because the sheets were itchy, or not being able to sleep because the temperature in the room was wrong. I would lay awake at night and read by the nightlight that was there for my younger siblings, and just didn't sleep. And I can remember crying sometimes because I was just, you know, uncomfortable in my own skin. And then in later years, I amassed enough teddy bears and stuffed animals that I slept in a nest of stuffed animals for years. So definite sensory issues. Couldn't stand tags in my shirts. I would cut them out. So that kind of thing. There were foods I couldn't eat because they were so, like oatmeal. Oh, no, nope. cream of wheat, no. Yogurt, no. So had some sensory issues too, but did not recognize that those were sensory issues until just the last couple of years. It'll come into play later. So pregnancy was completely normal. I was super healthy, besides that one scare that we had where it turned out it was nothing when we went and got the ultrasound. And we had a midwife, and I had a midwife on retainer, a private midwife, but I was also keeping regular doctor's appointments at the OBGYN. So we were going to do a home birth. And my mom, I was born in a hospital, and so was my next sister down, but my other 3 siblings were all born at home. To me, it was not an unnatural thing to have your baby at home. Plan to nurse and just pretty much do everything my mom had done. And I had read, I read like 50 pregnancy books. I owned What to Expect When You're Expecting, had it all highlighted and marked up. And once I got through all the pregnancy books the library had, I moved on to parenting books and read probably another 50 books of parenting books. I had already decided on my parenting style, which was going to be slightly different than my parents. I read every safety thing. I attended classes on how to be a good parent. Now, mind you, I'm doing all of this while my, at the time, boyfriend is in Florida working a construction job. And I am here going through the pregnancy by myself, coming from a very strict upbringing and getting pregnant out of wedlock. You got to remember that. So there's these added layers of stress. And then I quit my job because the manager wouldn't stop smoking while I'm pregnant right in front of me. And it was a lot going on, but the pregnancy was healthy. And then I went overdue and more overdue. And my doctor's talking, and I wanted to do everything natural. And my doctor is talking, we're going to induce. And I didn't want to be induced because I want to do everything natural. So at almost 3 weeks overdue, my midwife sends me herbs to take that should start labor. And they do. Take them for 24 hours. Labor starts right like it's supposed to. And she gets there in the evening, and I push for 4 hours. 4 hours. Now, remember I said I never, ever felt hungry? I never felt an urge to push either. So like my body is weird. And I pushed when she told me I was dilated. Pushed for 4 hours. He would come down, and then she was like, it's like he's bungee cording back up. And at the 4 hour mark, his heart rate started to go down. And so then it becomes baby in distress. So then we race to the emergency room. They tried to numb me so that I could be awake, and it didn't work. Because most medications, as I've now found out later in life, don't work on me or don't do what they're supposed to. Doesn't work. They have to put me under. So, when I come to the next morning, because this is like 3 o'clock in the morning, he's born, I have a nurse fussing over me, and she's like, now you have an IV of morphine, and all you have to do is push out. I'm like, get this out of me. And that's another thing. I wake up out of anesthesia, like I am awake, I am completely sharp, I am lucid. And she's like, she thinks I'm confused, and she's like, no, honey, you need that. And she thinks I'm like scared of needles or something. And I'm like, no, I can't nurse my baby if I'm on morphine. You need to get this out of me. Oh, we're going to have to call the doctor. I'm like, do that. Call the doctor. But you want that. He'll be fine with a bottle. I'm like, don't you give my baby a bottle. Sometimes I am ridiculous. So they got the morphine out of me, and I nursed the baby, and it was fine. But I had one of the nurses stop in. I thought this was really sweet. She's like, I know you planned on a home birth. Are you okay? Are you upset? And I said, I've read enough books that I know that a healthy baby is the best result. That's all I could hope for. I said, he's healthy and it doesn't matter how he got here. She's like, but you were planning a home birth. You weren't planning a C-section. I'm like, doesn't matter. He's healthy. So, he actually gained weight being breastfed before we left the hospital. I checked myself out a day before I was supposed to, against doctor's orders, had to sign paperwork, but I just wanted to go home. So, he nursed really well and gained weight quickly, and he was just the chubbiest, happiest, healthiest baby. Although he didn't sleep. He slept at night until like 5 a.m. and then he's up and wide awake and he wants to play and he's giggly and he's happy. And I'm a lifelong insomniac, and I am not used to being up that early. And so about, I think at the 6-week mark, I think it was when I went back for my checkup, I start to get the aches and pains again. Aches and pains in my joints and, places that shouldn't be sore because I'm not doing anything. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that doctor said I have fibromyalgia. But I'm too busy being a mom. I'm too busy nursing. I'm too busy with turmoil in my marriage. We had to move in with my mom and dad before I had the baby, and then moved out and got a different place. And then my ex, my now husband, at that time my husband, now my ex, but my husband at that time spent all of the bill money without telling me and then took off. So then I moved again. And so by the time that he was 4 years old, I had moved 8 times. And when you have fibromyalgia, stress makes it worse. And chronic stress and chronic fight or flight makes you worse. And you have reserves, but over time, you're not going to have reserves. Over time, there's going to be nothing left. So when Seth turned a year old, my husband at the time came back around. And something you have to keep in mind is that also in my brain, when I was taught something by someone in authority or I read something, say the Bible, I believed it was truth, 100%. There's no gray. The world is black and white, right and wrong. And so divorce was not something I would even think about. I absolutely 100% believed in you can work any marriage out. And when I got married, I loved my husband, loved him. I still adored him. I still thought he was absolutely wonderful. I loved him so much and continued to love him. My children were all conceived in love on my part. I loved him. So don't get me wrong on that account either. But he came back around. He'd been off living his own life. And as a good wife, he's my husband, we immediately get pregnant again. So Seth had just had his 1-year birthday and I'm pregnant again. Because I'd had a C-section, they consider the second pregnancy high risk. Do an early ultrasound and they know right away that something is very, very wrong. And so off to Akron Children's Hospital again. And they do genetic testing on both of us, and there's nothing. Our genetics are perfectly perfect. There's nothing that shows up in there. And they said that the baby had severe high drops. The chance of it surviving were less than 1%. So of going to full term and me having the baby were less than 1% chance. And that it was just a 1 in a million fluke. Nothing we had done was wrong. So they had done an amnio. We knew it was a girl, but they'd given us less than 1% chance of this baby surviving birth. And so the whole time that I'm pregnant, I'm grieving because I know this baby isn't going to survive. I've listened to the doctor. I've gone home and done my own research. And sure enough, at 3 months, I knew something was really wrong. And no bleeding, no spotting or anything, but I knew something was wrong. And so I called my OB and said, hey, something just feels wrong. Can I come in? And sure enough, there's no heartbeat. And then I found out to my horror that I could go another 3 months with this pregnancy with a fetus that had already died inside of me. And I was horrified. So I did go ahead and choose to have a D&C. And my mom didn't want me to. She wanted me to just let the miscarriage happen naturally. And I just wanted it to be over. And so we went ahead and did that. I had a checkup in 6 weeks and I was already pregnant again with my daughter. So she is a rainbow baby. And because then I'm pregnant again within 6 weeks, they're considering it another high risk pregnancy, even though I'm young and I'm healthy. So, the pain does not let up. The fibromyalgia pain does not let up when I get pregnant with my daughter. And then I've got more pain. Something's going on every time that I try and go up the stairs. There's something going on with my pelvic bone. So I go in and I can't remember the diagnosis for it, but basically my pelvic bone where it sits had separated. And then you've got a baby that's growing and putting weight. So I was on bed rest for the rest of my pregnancy. Incredible pain and on pain pills. They were supposedly approved for pregnancy. Now they've been pulled from the market for everybody. But so there's continued stress throughout that pregnancy. We moved again when I was 3 months pregnant, and just lots and lots and lots of stress. And now I'm in pain everywhere, not just the aches and pains that I was having from fibromyalgia. Back then they would still let you do a vaginal birth after a cesarean. So it's called a VBAC, and I was able to do a VBAC. And after pushing 3 hours, she was born. And then she was colicky. And let me tell you, this baby was beautiful. She's just the most beautiful baby on the face of the earth. But she's colicky and she doesn't like me and she screams. And the only person she calms down for is her dad. And so by this point in time, we're living back with my parents again. And so we move out. I don't know how many weeks after she was born, but we move out and we only have one car. Remember, I still don't drive, don't have a license. Oh no, I take that back. In between, I had gotten my license. Still don't have a car. We have one car, but I got my license, and my husband at the time moved us further away from my parents. So now it's long distance to call them. Cell phones still aren't a thing at this point in time. And I can't, now he's isolated me from family. We're living in a different town where I don't know anybody, and I don't have a car, and I'm at home with a 1-year-old and a newborn who's colicky. And so when she's a couple months old, then he takes off again with all the money again. So I get a job and I have to start supplementing with formula, because now I'm at a factory job where, you know, you can go in, and if there isn't work, if they haven't gotten enough work in for the day, you go home in 4 hours. Or if they got overloaded, you go home in 12 hours. So now I don't have a regular schedule. And so we moved again to be closer to family again, moved from the house into an apartment in town. And I switched jobs so that I would have a more regular schedule, and I've got them in daycare, and of course then they're sick all the time, and so Meg gets RSV, and then we're in the hospital and she's in the oxygen tent, and so just stress on stress on stress, and we're going to end it there for today. That was the end of part 5. But fight or flight response has been engaged now for a couple of years with no break. The stress levels have not gone down. Now I've had, 3 pregnancies, 2 that went the full time. So that's the point we're at. But I still have not been to doctor to get my fibromyalgia treated because I'm too busy having babies and nursing. So thanks for watching. Part 6 will be soon.